on radio.
Okay, let's get into the conversation then with the new partner of the Premiership and the PSL, the elite league in South African football, Betway. Mark Rowles is here, head of marketing at Betway. Good evening from us on Radio 2000, Mark, and thanks for being here.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of days with the launch of the new season of the SA20 and now the confirmation and the launch of the Betway Premiership.
Tell me about it.
But
At the start of the year, it didn't feel like September was going to be a busy time, but we're off to a great start.
Yes, and you're also involved with the rugby, you're involved with cricket, and you're involved with football. What is it about the South African sporting market that's attracting Betway here?
I think you've hit the nail on the head with the sponsorship attraction. Sponsorship's always been a big part of our global marketing mix. I think if you look at some of the EPL sponsorships we've taken, we're kind of been front of shirts, headline sponsor of West Ham United for a long time. That's what really put us on the global map. And yeah, when we launched in South Africa almost 6 years ago, kind of said, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's connect with people and what they're passionate about. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a sports betting site. So let's look at the sports that people are interested in, passionate about, and see what sponsorship opportunities there are in those sports. So that's certainly been a key driver for us in terms of our portfolio, which has grown beautifully over the last few years. And yeah, we're very proud of where we are today and what we're involved in.
Yeah, is it also an indication of the rise in sports betting here in South Africa?
Absolutely. I think it's a fairly well-known fact that the industry is growing. Brings with it positive and negative aspects, let's be honest. But absolutely, the sports betting industry is growing in this country. And I think something we're really focused on is trying to do the right thing with that growth. So an investment like this for us in the South African football landscape, I think this property, if we are honest, was always probably going to go to one of the betting companies. So it's going to come down to what we do with it, and hopefully we can really demonstrate some positive things there, and show that there's good meaning and good intention behind an investment of this size.
And at the initial announcement of the partnership a couple of weeks ago, it was referred to as the biggest single sponsorship in South African sport. What exactly does that mean?
Look, I think, to be honest, that's exactly what it means. I think from a pure sponsorship perspective, of course, the broadcast rights deals are much more expensive. And I think those numbers are kind of stratospheric in comparison to the normal sponsorship landscape. But as far as sponsorships have gone in South Africa, to our knowledge, we think this is the largest single investment in a sponsorship property in South African history. So it's a huge step. It's a bold play.
Is that in terms? How do you value that? What do you base it on?
Look, I think that's certainly the way it was brought across was certainly around the rand value, purely of the rights fee, in terms of the investment being made purely on rights. Obviously, then there's leveraging budgets and how we spend those, what we spend them on, that then adds on top of that. And I think, the number the chairman said on the stage on the announcement certainly got some tongues wagging. I think that number is probably, if we're honest, closer to the full 5 year. We have a guaranteed 3 year upfront, but there are 2 additional years on the back end of that, which we absolutely hope to get to, and then I think that number probably comes into play. But
so based on the initial 3 years, what's the correct number then, so that we do factual reporting here?
Less than the number that was quoted, I'll say that.
Okay.
I'm not going to give you the actual number, but it's certainly, and what I would say is it's a market related or a fair increase on what the previous sponsor was paying.
And I would think probably the chairman would have preferred a 5 year deal, and you went for 3 years. What's the thinking there then?
To be honest, I think that's partly linked to our starting conversation around the sports betting landscape growing. We're a professional business. We look at these things and take these things very seriously. So both sides, in terms of any sponsorship agreement, want to build in a level of, call it, protection. And the protection there is if there's any major changes in the landscape in terms of what we are able to offer or how we're able to offer it, then of course you want to have a level of protection. That being said, 3 years we believe is still a good commitment, and like I said, hopefully it turns into a 5 year and no drama, and it's something we can really use to connect to South Africans.
Yeah, and what is it about the PSL that's attracted you to this league?
I think we saw it today at our launch. The pure attention and focus and passion that South Africans have for this sport and this league is on another level. You mentioned the cricketing space, the rugby space. We're also involved in the horse racing space with the Betway Summer Cup. football in this country is just on another planet. It's really what drives the narrative, the day-to-day conversation. Madam CEO said it on the stage. Every street corner is having a football conversation. And although the big European leagues get a lot of focus and attention, to be honest, in none of our African markets that we as Betway are involved in have we ever seen anything like it from an engagement point of view. Purely on social media, as an example, you can put out the best betting offer in the world and you'll get 1 or 2 likes and a comment. You put out who's your best Premiership team of the 90s and you'll get 5,000 comments and a war on X because people are having disagreements, and it just shows that passion. And it really, I think it's the lifeblood of the country. We're a sports mad country, and we want to embrace that. And I think this is like I said, this sponsorship I think is a welcome injection of funds to the PSL and to the Premiership space. And yeah, we're hoping to really kind of dial up some of the positive messaging, so that it's not just take, because I think that's a lot of people's perception of the industry.
Yeah, but I guess it's also credit to the PSL of how they've been able to grow this league over the years, that if one sponsor leaves, there's another one, because it was mentioned at the initial announcement that Betway has been trying to get into football for a very long time.
There was lots of things mentioned. Yeah, look,
you can tell us what is fiction or what's fiction.
Again, I think it's fairly well known. The league's had a bit of an arm's length conversation with the betting, or relationship with the betting industry. We have had multiple conversations over the years, but I think we've always respected the league's position that they weren't necessarily ready or interested in taking a betting partner until such time as they understood the industry better. And I like to think we were hopefully part of that education to say, look, this is our intention would not be to come in and just plaster betting messaging everywhere. We want to help the future of the league. We want to really celebrate the heroes, and we want to do a football job. I think that's the key piece here. This is actually a football property for us. Of course, there's betting, but if you've seen some of the content that came out of our launch today, our tagline, Lisigazini forever. It's in people's blood. We really want to relate to people based on what it is that got them into football, tell those stories, celebrate the current crop of players, try and improve the current game so that it's a sustainable league that tomorrow's heroes can really look up to and aspire to be one day playing in the Betway Premiership.
And to be fair to you, you've been involved in these projects. We've seen over the past few years there's been Betway Cares. We've seen you helping also coaches and former players getting their coaching licenses. I know we had, who did we have? Was it Steve Sekano and one of the Swallows legends that were here in studio also, and you were also helping them. So you've always been involved in somehow. Why is that part also important to you?
Again, it's just owning the fact that we need to give back to the communities in which we operate. We appreciate that we are part of the sin industry. We don't shy away from that. So we are making money when, unfortunately, people sometimes lose their bets.
Yeah.
But we want to be giving back, and we want to be giving back generously. And I think there are so many well-meaning projects in this country, and projects that deserve input and financial assistance. And I'm glad you mentioned Betway Cares. I think it's something that we really are planning to ramp up very soon. We're actually when Steve Sekano came, he was part of our first intake for Betway 12th Man, which is a program. We're literally busy with our second edition now, which is opened up beyond just footballers, so ex-professionals across a variation of sports, really trying to upskill them. What is that next step in life? I think it's one of the... It's spoken about...
The one about transitioning, yes. I remember speaking to Coach Simpiwe Dludlu, actually was involved with that,
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that it gets a bit of attention. But when you chat to these ex-athletes, you realize that morning after they've retired, they wake up and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And there's not a huge amount of help in the system. And we've got some ideas as well for things along the lines of bursary programs for current players and people potentially nearing the end of their careers. There's a lot of, I think, good thought that's going to come through in the next couple of years in the Betway Premiership space to, try and catch some of those people before they get to that point of retirement. So there are plans in place. And it might seem like we're only helping a handful of people, but you got to start with one, right?
Yeah. Okay, if you're just joining us, we're speaking to the head of marketing at Betway. Rowles is here with us today. They officially launched the Betway Premiership, which gets underway next weekend. And what was also interesting for me, today was that there was a messaging about responsible betting and responsible gambling, and I thought maybe it was missing the first time that this partnership was announced there, and it seems like you've intentionally gone big on this to try and create this awareness also. Do you see that as part of your responsibility, or is it just something that you have to get out the way?
Absolutely intentional. And interesting to your question, do we have to do it? No, we don't have to do it at all. We've got our legal lines and our disclaimers, and you work in the radio space and you hear every betting ad out there that has the 15 seconds of fame at the end saying bet responsibly, etc., etc. We really want to make sure that people understand that there is a potential downside to betting. It can create addictive behaviors. Again, we're owning the industry we're in, and what we launched today was with 4 of our Betway squad actually in an advert. That's going to be what we are using. That's Klompo, Cheese Boy, Majoro, and Sipiwe.
Oh yes.
And the beauty about that is this wasn't us saying to them, guys, please, we pay you as members of the Betway squad to be influencers on our behalf. Like, would you be interested, or please come and do this for us? When we brought up the topic, they said, well, we'd love to get involved. How can we add value here? And yeah, I think we owe it to the sector, we owe it to the country to try and make sure people know that, like, just what the behaviors are. Don't chase your losses. Don't bet more than you can afford to lose. The last thing we want is a sector that's under scrutiny for all the wrong reasons because people are losing money that they couldn't afford to lose. So what we are looking for, or looking to try and do, is create a bit of extra entertainment. So when you're watching the game, if you've got money you could afford to lose on that game and you bet on an outcome, if you win it, that's great. That's credit to you. If you don't, you're not sitting there scratching your head saying, oh, I must double down. Like, that's the behavior we don't like to encourage. Betting terminology, that's called chasing your losses. And there's a handful of key messages which we're going to be bringing across through the season and the next. This is not lip service. This is not something you're going to see at the launch and not again. This is something we're going to be communicating regularly and going over and above our, call it, mandatory requirements from a regulatory point of view to really get the message home.
Yeah. So is it just about messaging, or do you offer support, or do you refer them to someone else then if you come across those who have a problem?
It's a bit of everything, to be honest. There's absolutely a referral. We work extremely closely with the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation.
Oh, we had them in the studio last week.
That's correct. So I think people's perception is that's another lip service conversation. It's really not. We have meaningful conversations with them frequently. We talk about what's working in the process, what's not. Are we identifying players correctly that are demonstrating problem gambling behavior? If yes, great. If no, how can we improve that? What tools can we put in place, either from our tech or our contact center point of view? We're referring people who are displaying kind of tendencies that don't look great to us to the Responsible Gambling Helpline. And there's a couple of hotlines out there. Again, I think the onus is also still on the person to understand that there are limitations here that I should put in place. I should set my own boundaries, set limits, set budgets, all those kind of things. And there's, of course, just like anything, alcohol, cigarettes are the same. There is still always an onus on the individual to look after themselves. But yes, I like to think we are certainly working as hard, if not harder, than anyone else in the industry to make sure that those are real and meaningful interventions.
Do you have the power to block someone's account if you see patterns that maybe are indicating irresponsible behavior?
We do, and importantly, they do. You can choose on our website and our app. You can go to the hamburger menu, click on responsible betting, and select how long you want to take a cool-off period for. And that's anything from a handful of days to please lock my account forever. If you don't want to go that way, you can also get hold of us via chat, via contact center, and via email, and ask for your account to be locked. You can put a timeline on that. There's various tools in place there, and yes, we do have the ability to lock an account if we see problematic behavior. But before we do that, we'll generally reach out, because again, I think that's not particularly helpful. Let's own the fact that it's a competitive industry. There's many competitors out there. We want to be trying to help people if they've got a problem, as opposed to just passing them on to the next operator.
And then you've mentioned that what attracts you, before I go to the voice notes, what's attracted you to the league is the fact that there's a lot of engagement. Does that also translate to betting on the league? Do you see that? Because back in the days, horse racing was very big. People would go to the totes with their newspapers and spend the whole day there. And then we started seeing sports betting coming through, English Premier League and all of that. And then local football was also, odds were offered on local football also. Does that engagement now translate to betting on local football?
It does on a level. That being said, maybe sharing too much here, but the European leagues dominate in terms of where the really kind of the real volume of the bets are placed. It's more around the engagement and the passion point for us to be involved in a league like this. Hopefully my access card still works tomorrow and my CEO doesn't fire me off the back of this comment, but my ROI on this is not fully judged on betting on the league. I think we'd like to pick up football fans and look after them as customers who are Betway Premiership fans, people out there who are supporting the teams in the league, of course. But it's not really entirely a betting sponsorship, if I can say that. The engagement there is much more about people are just mad about their team. And I think it came through in the reaction to our tagline earlier. Everyone's got their story. The whole room started chatting, saying, "Oh yeah, this is my background," and yeah, we want to be focusing more on that than necessarily on the betting.
Yeah, and what do you think has led to this rise of betting here in South Africa? And is it just South Africa? Is it the continent as a whole?
It's the continent as a whole, and again, we all watch European football. I think it's a global phenomenon. There are markets in the world that are unlicensed. I think I mentioned it on the stage earlier, we are part of a group that is actually licensed across the world. We are listed on the New York Stock Exchange. We only operate in regulated environments where there are strict rules of engagement. Some regulators across this continent are better than others in terms of actually regulating and monitoring the behavior, monitoring the sort of the business practices of our sector. And I think the ones that are better, and South Africa's very close, if not at the top of that pile, are the ones where there's the possibility for a sustained industry that can really add the value back. And credit to our competitors as well. I think a lot of them do a lot of good work in the communities, and it's important. It can't just be a one horse show, if I can say that it's Betway giving back and nobody else. But yeah, it's certainly a global phenomenon. It's out there. There's various conversations based on the legalities and regulations in each market. And although that might seem like the boring stuff, I think it's critically important. We are fans of well-regulated markets as Betway. We certainly want to operate in markets that are well-regulated, where there's set parameters. If everyone plays by the rules, we are a huge tax generator.
So what kind of regulations are in place here in South Africa? I heard you say that at the launch that betting is regulated.
Yeah, the regulations go from advertising. Everything we do has to get an approval from the boards where we licensed. So we literally have to submit everything, the sponsorship included, to make sure that they're comfortable. What are we saying? How are we saying it? Where are the logos appearing? All those sorts of things. And then in terms of some of the standard operating procedures around, you must give customers the ability to lock accounts. You must feature a certain amount of responsible betting kind of messaging across the platforms, etc., etc. So it's fairly widespread. But yeah, again, I think the critical point here is this is a huge job creator, actually, this industry. There are tens of thousands of people in South Africa employed by this industry. And it's also a huge tax revenue generator for the government. So again, I think where's the government getting its funding from? This is an industry that gives back, and I think in this market certainly we feel it is a fairly taxed market. It is certainly taxed on gross gaming revenue, which is kind of our first line of profit, and then also obviously corporate taxes. So I think on a number of levels there's money going back into the system. It's not that take that people sometimes have the assumption that it is.
Okay, Mark Rowles is with us here, Head of Marketing at Betway. They've officially launched their partnership, their sponsorship of the Betway Premiership. We'll get into more details about that, but let's hear some of the voice notes then.
Tamiso, how are you, my brother? Lucas here in Centurion.